Yo, 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 what's going on? It's David. I just wanted to share with you guys. I'm gonna be starting this. I'm gonna be streaming. I'm gonna try to do it every Wednesday. If not, I'll upload it on Thursday. So the end of the week, we get our week recaps in Sleeper for our league. But I want to make recaps as well, as you know, I'm the only two-time champ. Unfortunately, I don't have my trophies with me today, but next stream I'll have both my trophies. I'll be streaming and just recording videos for you guys, giving you a little bit of a recap what happened this last week. So what I'll be doing is I'm going to go over every matchup, the good players everyone had, the bad players, how their benches performed, what happened in the matchups. Then I'll go through some trades if we have any trades, which we have one this week, courtesy of your boy and Dennis. And also at the end, I'll just do some fun stuff. Today I'm gonna go over everyone's hot takes. So let's get into it. First of all, today is 9/11. I want to give a moment of silence. Nobody speak. A moment of silence for 9/11, all the fallen victims, everyone on Vlad's fantasy team. His team was the only team that scored less than 100 fantasy points this week, week 1. We all know he's the worst drafter, 0 trophies, so moment of silence. Okay, and we are back with your boy, the highest scoring team of week 1 with 157.08 fantasy points. So matchup by matchup, we'll go with the first one, me versus Dennis. David versus Dennis. Sorry, Dennis, I know you had a good effort. It was a good try. You scored the 3rd most fantasy points this week. So, our league doesn't do anything special. I've tried every year, but you can score a lot of points. You can get a lot of points for. But in the end, if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. And in this matchup, I come out on top. Team mixing more cups of brown rice with 157.08. to Team Discount CMC 127.12. So the standouts, let's first go to Dennis's team. Dennis's team, let's just say he had bad and good. So we'll start with the bad. He had Drake London. Oof, we all knew Drake London was going to be a bad pick. We roasted him when we made the pick, but he still made the pick. Drake London had a whopping 2.5 fantasy points in week 1. That's not a good sign. He had 2 catches, 3 targets, 15 yards. I mean, that's terrible for your wide receiver 1 being drafted. Dennis really messed up there, and I don't think he's making it back to the championship with him. Also, Mark Andrews, Thursday night we all saw it. He sucks. Isaiah Likely, the tight end, won on that team. I don't actually think so, but just to make Dennis mad, we'll say that. Mark Andrews, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 14 yards. I heard something. He was in a car crash. He was still recovering. I don't know. All I know is Dennis's team had bad. He sucked. And worst of all, let's go to worst of all, Puka Nacua. I don't know if you guys were tracking this matchup, Puka Nacua versus Cooper Kupp. I was talking to Tony, and Tony said, David, you can't be sure. You can't be safe knowing that Breece Hall can score 30 points, and Dennis is right back in it. And at the time, I had Cooper Kupp Sunday night, Dennis had Puka Nacua Sunday night, and Breece Hall on Monday night, and he was only behind 27 points. I'm like, oh no, I actually might blow this. I'm like, I might be the 2nd highest scoring of the week and lose this week. But what happens? Puka Nacua gets injured. I mean, I liked the draft pick. I thought he was going to be good, but nope. Cooper Kupp outshines him, and look at this fantasy genius right here, drafting Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver 1 on the LA Rams. He's looking like he's going to be a top 5, maybe top 3 wide receiver for the rest of the season. I mean, 21 targets, 14 catches. I mean, he just went off. He had 110 yards and a touchdown, where Puka Nacua he was 4 for 4, 4 catches, 4 targets, 35 yards only. He only scored 6 fantasy points versus Cooper Kupp's 25. So when I was up by like 50 points, I knew it. Breece Hall, I know he's good, but he's not doing 50. That was the bad on Dennis's team. Drafting Puka Nacua over Cooper Kupp, not good at all. Going to the good on his team, Cowboys special teams. I'll tell you, Dennis, you are a genius. Last year, he said he lost because the Cowboys defense, which Kiwi had, scored 40 fantasy points against him. And he didn't want that happening again, so he picked up Brandon Aubrey and the Cowboys defense. And they scored 39 fantasy points combined. That was 30% of Dennis's final score, which is crazy. For me, my kicker and defense only scored 8% of my final score. So you can see the big difference. I mean, his kicker and defense combining for 39, almost 40 points, that's a big gap. And, I mean, he almost came back. That's why he was so close with Breece Hall, Puka Nacua versus Cooper Kupp, because of that Cowboys special team. But, I mean, if you're good on your team as your special teams, you're doing something wrong, Dennis. You got to fix that team. I know you're trying to make some trades. My team, the bad. I know it was only one bad because I won. I scored the most fantasy points, and I'm just doing great. Not that many injuries, so there's not really much bad. But what I will say is DJ Moore on my team. He was my wide receiver 3. He only scored 7.5 fantasy points. He had 8 targets, 5 receptions, 36 yards. I don't know how much we could trust Caleb Williams, the rookie. I mean, I don't know. And out of all the players, all the skill positions, not special, the skill position players on my team, DJ Moore is actually the only one that didn't score a touchdown. I had everyone either received or rushed a touchdown other than DJ Moore. That's why he was the bad. And the good, of course, Cooper Kupp. I mean, he went off. I really believe it could be a 2021 season again where he was a wide receiver number 1. I mean, that's what it's looking like. It's looking like their offense has to target Cooper Kupp. Without Cooper Kupp, they're nothing. Unless Puka Nacua comes back, but right now he's on IR. Then they have their bye week. I mean, he's not coming back till like week 7, week 8. I mean, Puka Nacua is out. And even then, if he re-injures, Cooper Kupp is like up there. I mean, I know Vlad really agrees, and we'll see. Now, moving on to the benches. Dennis, I mean, one surprise he had me was Friday night, he started Christian Watson in his lineup over Tank Dell. I was making fun of him, you know, other people, I was trying to have everyone make fun of him. I mean, what a dumb decision. Christian Watson over Tank Dell. I mean, he drafted Tank Dell probably like four rounds higher or something. But it turned out to be a good move. I mean, Christian Watson had a touchdown and only finished with 8 fantasy points. That sucks. Without that touchdown, he's nothing. But he scored more points than Tank Dell. So Tank Dell underperformed on Dennis's bench, not in his starting lineup. That was a good call by Dennis. I mean, it was only like a 1 or 2 point difference, but there is some fantasy genius there, Dennis. I'll tell you that. And David, I mean, I don't have him on my team now, but Jamison Williams went off. Dude is such a beast, and he was my second to last round. I was on the churn, so my last 2 picks were back-to-back. Jamison Williams was my last pick, so everybody that didn't draft Jamison Williams, you really messed up. You let the champ get him. I just turned him into Brian Robinson. We'll talk about that in a bit. Next matchup, moving on to Tony versus Kiwi. I mean, this was game over on Friday. Saquon, 3 touchdowns on the Eagles. He's a beast. Tony's team is looking scary. But also, it was a game of underperforming receivers. Both of their receivers weren't really that good. Tony and Kiwi drafted good receivers, but they just, I mean, other than Deebo Samuel, no one really did good out of their receivers. And they had like receivers like Marvin Harrison, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Pittman, Amari Cooper, and their receivers just didn't show up. And last thing, Tony Etienne, I called it. He sucks. This dude fumbled the ball. Tank Bigsby had better yards per carry, the same amount of rushes. Etienne is trash. He's going to be trash. He's going to end up the season trash. They're only giving him work and goal line carries because he was a starter last year, but still. Etienne sucks. I'm calling it. That's my bold prediction is he finishes maybe outside the top 24. I mean, I really don't like this guy. Good waiver pickup by Taras picking up Tank Bigsby. So let's go to their standouts. Kiwi's team. Kiwi Team Marvin's Room had 100.76 points in a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, who had 133.78. So Marvin's Room, the bad, of course, Marvin Harrison, a rookie, like, he sucked. He totally sucks. 0.9 points. I don't know if you guys realize that. 1 reception for 4 yards. He had that wide open touchdown. He was running, waving his arm, and Kyler just didn't see him, didn't hit him. I mean, I don't know if it's because he's a rookie or what, but this dude's got to like complain to get the ball. Only 3 targets when you're drafted in the, what was it, top 4 draft picks of the NFL draft, top 5 picks. I mean, dude's a beast. They got to give him the ball. That's bad, and it's really because Kiwi's team name jinxed it. Marvin's Room, I mean, come on. Really, what is that? I mean, your team name, that's like an announcer's curse. Team name's curse. Rookie wide receiver, we've never seen him perform yet. You make that your team name, that is not good. And anyone wondering out there, I did try offering a trade to him to buy low on Marvin. He's not budging. He's asking for Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in football. So don't even think about trying to trade with Kiwi. It's not going to work. The good in Kiwi's team, Debo Samuel was the only wide receiver, like I mentioned, that did good. He had 16.2 fantasy points, 9 targets, 5 receptions, 54 yards, but also 8 carries, 23 yards, and a touchdown. And really, that's what I think is that Debo Samuel's the one that benefits the most from Christian McCaffrey missing time. If CMC doesn't play, Debo's the one that skyrockets. Obviously Jordan Mason, but it's not Ayuk, it's not Kittle, it is Debo Samuel. He's looking so good on that field. No one could tackle him. I mean, he looks great. And then also Kiwi's team, Bijan Robinson. Bijan, although he didn't score a lot of points, 13.6, it's because the Falcons were losing. He had 5 receptions, 5 targets, 43 yards, 18 carries, 68 yards. Bijan is the workhorse. He is getting everything there. I mean, he's a bell cow running back. He had 85% of the carries. He had 18 compared to Tyler Algier, who only had 3. No one else had carries. And he is the Falcons player who had the most receptions. That's right, on the offense with Kyle Pitts, with Drake London, with whoever else they have, Darnell Mooney. Bijan Robinson had the most targets in a game they're losing. So if you're telling me in the game they're losing, he's going to have the most targets and a lot of carries, and in the game they're winning, he's going to have a whole bunch of carries. I mean, this guy is so good. The talent there, I mean, we're just lucky he didn't score a touchdown. So Bijan Robinson to the moon. I think he's definitely a top 3 running back rest of season. So Kiwi's got a little bit of a bright side. Tony's team. The bad. Amari Cooper, he flew down my rankings. Deshaun Watson, he still sucks. The game that the Browns were losing, you would think they would throw the ball more. Amari Cooper, 9 targets, which is great, but only 2 catches. I mean, he's just getting uncatchable balls. I mean, Amari Cooper just sucks. 2.6 points from your wide receiver 2? That is not good. Amari Cooper is just, I mean, he flew down my rankings. He's outside the top 24, and in our league, top 24, that's a top 3 receiver. He's not a top 3 receiver in our league, Tony. I'm sorry to say. I know you like those. I do too. We like those starter receivers. We don't want the backups like the Tank Dells or the Jalen Waddles, Devontae Smiths. But you took an L on this one. Amari Cooper looks like he's going to struggle all year. And unless you get a touchdown, Deshaun Watson is not throwing him good footballs. I know that they were playing the Cowboys, but I think it helps you because if they're not playing the Cowboys, they're running the ball down any other defense's throat, and that's what the Browns always wanted to do. They're doing it with Jerome Ford. They wanted to do it with Chubb. I mean, they're just going to want to keep doing it. The good on Tony's team. Josh Allen, we all knew this. Dude's like quarterback 1, 31 fantasy points, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Dude's a beast. Dude's going to do it in games that they're losing, winning, everything. He's going to be quarterback 1. I mean, that was self-explanatory. Saquon, such a beast. Like I mentioned earlier, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's going to eat all season long. I mean, Saquon's just such a talented running back behind this O-line. And behind this O-line, DeAndre Swift was able to have 1,000 yards. But Saquon's behind it now? Oof. I mean, people are saying Saquon's top 3 running back in fantasy now. I don't know about that, but he's definitely up there. Going to their bench, Tony had a stacked bench. He had 75 points from his bench. I mean, he just had every player on his bench go off except for the ones that didn't play. Marquise Brown and Palmer got injured. Tony's bench went off 75 points. I mean, that's 75% of what Kiwi's whole team scored, which is kind of crazy. Godwin, he's a beast on Tony's bench. I don't know why he didn't start him. It looks like Godwin's going to be a beast. Dude flew up my rankings. I really like him. So Tony, if you're looking to get rid of Godwin, hit me up. Kiwi's bench, David Montgomery. That's really the only bright side on Kiwi's bench. David Montgomery went off that overtime drive. It was all him. It's looking like the Lions were about to lose to the Rams until they started handing the ball off to David Montgomery. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm sorry, Taras, but looks like David Montgomery's still in this. It's going to be the same as last year. They both get carries. They both do good. Dan and Taras. Let's go to this matchup, the closest one of the week. I'm on top of the world, Dan, with 117.88 points to T. Taras, 114.62. So just a little bit over a 3-point difference in their game. It was a close game, but this year, I'm sorry, Taras, tight ends suck. George Kittle could not win you the dub on Monday Night Football because looks like every tight end this year sucks. I mean, I had Kyle Pitts. I was the last person to draft a tight end, and he scored the most fantasy points out of all the tight ends only because of a touchdown. Every other tight end sucks. I mean, we're going to have to see if they bounce back, what's going on this year, but so far, I mean, tight ends are getting off to a really, really slow start. George Kittle, you should be happy that he got you 6 points. The standouts from your team, Taras's team. The bad, Chuba Hubbard. I'm making a note to self. Next year, the year after, any years, don't go 0 RB or hero RB like Taras did with Gibbs, and he just let go of the RB position. Because as you see, his RB2 really screwed him. 1.4 points. I mean, if that running back gets 5 points, Taras wins. If Chuba Hubbard got 5 points, but he got 1.4. Why? Because he's Chuba Hubbard. You can't wait that long to draft a running back. You have to have a better running back. So, Brian Robinson's on my bench. If you need a starter, hit me up. Okay, the Bears defense. Taras's defense went off. They scored 25 fantasy points, and that's because the Bears, I mean, Caleb Williams sucked, and the only reason the Bears were able to win was because the defense scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, the Bears won. They were down 17-0. They came back. They won. I think it was 24-17, and that is without them scoring an offensive touchdown. Defensive touchdowns only, field goals. I mean, that's crazy. So Bears did really good. And Nico Collins. Nico, even though he didn't score a touchdown, he scored 14.7 fantasy points, and he really looks like that wide receiver 1 on the Texans. I know Diggs got the touchdowns, but Nico is just, I mean, if you're watching the game, he looks so good out there. He looks like he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on the team. Going to Dan's team, Amon-Ra. I mean, Dan's team is just, he won. He scored pretty decently points, but his his players that he drafted didn't show up. I mean, Amon-Ra, what happened to him? That guy, everyone says he's the most consistent wide receiver. That's the most consistent wide receiver, my butt. You guys, everyone loves Amon-Ra. Dan, you should have taken Justin Jefferson. Amon-Ra sucked. Jameson Williams was better. Sam Laporta was better. I mean, how are you going to say the most consistent wide receiver comes out of a game that they do go into overtime, and he only gets 2.8 points? I mean, if the game's that close, the best wide receiver on the team should be going off. But that team just likes to run the ball. And another thing bad on Dan's team, like, what happened to Dalton Kincaid? Did he, like, die? Like, seriously. 1.6 points from a top 5 drafted tight end? Like, I know everyone's tight ends did bad, but even Mark Andrews, no one did that bad. 1.6 points. I mean, Josh Allen went off. James Cook went off. The Bills were just, there was no alpha wide receiver. They don't have Stephon Diggs. They don't have another wide receiver. Like, if Dalton Kincaid doesn't step up, I mean, just that means that guy sucks at football. Like, seriously. But Dan's good on his team. Mike Evans. I know we're all Bucks fans, but Mike Evans is such a beast, dude. He's so good. 2 touchdowns. I mean, you throw them the long, deep touchdown. He gets that. He does that swim move over the receiver, gets his hands out to the ball. He does the classic fade. They don't got a goal line back because Mike Evans is their goal line back. It's the fade to him. I mean, I feel like he's the only wide receiver that can do that. He's so good. First ballot Hall of Famer. Dude's a beast. I mean, everyone is waiting for the decline every year, but it never happens. We got to draft Mike Evans way higher every single year. 20 fantasy points. Come on. Also, one takeaway I want to take away from Dan's team is if Devon Achane does not get hurt, dude is like maybe RB1 on the season. I mean, everything you wanted. Dude is like so much passing work. If he doesn't get injured, I know he's questionable for Thursday night. He had 10 carries, 24 yards, a touchdown. That touchdown was on the goal line, and dude just cannot get tackled. That's how good he is. 7 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards. I mean, that's a wide receiver stat line. 7 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards. And on top of that, he gets the rushing work. I mean, dude is just such a good football player. If he didn't get injured, he would be so good. So good, just like Christian McCaffrey. He's literally up there. If he's not injured, he's like a top 5 running back for me. I'm serious. I wish I had that guy on my team. Their bench. Taras, he had no backup running backs on his bench. Like, all his backup running backs suck. Blake Corum, 0 points. Zamir White, 3.6. Jaleel McLaughlin, 3.3. Warren, 3 points. Tajay Spears, 5. Like, where's the backup running backs, Taras? If Chuba doesn't perform, like, I know you went 0 RB and you tried to draft him late, but all the guys you drafted late, all of them sucks. But it's a good thing because he is making moves on the waivers. Taras did pick up Tank Bigsby. He did pick up somebody else. I don't remember who it was. Another running back, Jalen Wright from the Dolphins. So he is making moves. Taras is trying to get those running backs shooting for upside. And you know, with those running backs, Taras's team is looking pretty good. He could have won that game if he had one of those running backs. And Dan had Jaden Reed, who was so good with Jordan Love. But then that injury at the end of the game, I mean, to throw the Hail Mary, Jordan Love, like right before the play, gets injured. I mean, do you start Jaden Reed or not? Dude just had 30 fantasy points with Love. A quarterback downgrade was, I mean, he scores 15. I mean, dude is so good. He's the clear wide receiver 1 on the Packers. I think you might have to start Jordan Reed in your flex. I don't know, but dude's a beast. He would have been so good with Love. When Love comes back, don't forget about Jaden Reed. Last matchup of the day, Rosty versus Vlad. I don't know what to call it. The Loser Bowl. I mean, these guys scored so low. It's actually the first overall pick versus the second overall pick. Vlad picked first in our draft. Rosty picked second in our draft. So they're facing each other. But sadly, the first overall pick, McCaffrey couldn't even play for Vlad. Maybe that's why he took the L. But the big storyline here is Aaron Jones versus James Conner. We all roasted Vlad. Aaron Jones was such a bad draft pick. James Conner was so much better. And they finally go up against each other. Week 1. Who's going to get the best of him? And it's stupid Aaron Jones. He scores 17.9 fantasy points. And James Conner scores 17.8. By 0.1, Aaron Jones outscores James Conner. But that's because they play the Giants. I don't think they're going to win a lot of games like that. And when they pass, I don't think Darnold's going to dump it off to the running backs as much. So, Aaron Jones declined, coming in hot. James Conner, he's only going to rise. I still think James Conner is going to be a better draft pick. These standouts from this game. Vlad's team, the bad was a lot. Like I mentioned, dude didn't even score 100 fantasy points. How can you be such a bad fantasy player that in a 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex league, you can't even score 100 fantasy points? That's a sorry team, Vlad. The biggest thing was Burrow under 10 points and Olave 2 points. Like, Burrow, they start slow every year. Quarterback scoring 10 points is really, really bad considering Josh Allen scored 31. I mean, maybe you should have drafted Josh Allen higher, like Tony said. Tony told us to take a quarterback early. I waited a little bit. But Burrow, bad game. Against the Patriots, too. If he couldn't have a good game against the Patriots, what's he going to do against other defenses? And Olave with 2 fantasy points, I mean, this game got out of control. They just destroyed the Panthers. So, yeah, I think Olave will be good. The good on Vlad's team, he got CMC's backup, Jordan Mason. That's like the best thing on his team. Jordan Mason completely went off. 21 fantasy points. He's looking like McCaffrey out there. Maybe not his exact play style, not as much pass catching, but the running out there, I mean, I think I could get 5 yards again in that San Francisco O-line. I think I could get 5 yards a carry because they just open up the biggest holes, and this guy just runs the ball. Any running back would look good in that system. Diggs, he looks like Diggs. Everyone thought he was going to suck, but he scores the touchdowns. He runs good routes, the short yardage, end zone threat that they need. He's not going to be the deep guy anymore with Nico Collins there and Tank Dell there, but when they come around the red zone, I think C.J. Stroud's looking for Diggs. I think Diggs is going to be open a lot of touchdowns. And yeah, Aaron Jones, good pick. He did good. Like I said, it was against the Giants. Let's see this next week how he does against the 49ers. Then if he performs good against the 49ers, I'll review it again and maybe I have to take the L on this one. Rosty's team, the bad, Devin Singletary was in his lineup. I mean, I know Taras had Chuba Hubbard, and Chuba Hubbard is worse, but Devin Singletary is in your lineup. Like, come on. You don't have a better player than Devin Singletary? That was a little sad. I mean, he scored 7 fantasy points, so if Taras had Devin Singletary, he still would have won, but Devin Singletary it's not good having him in your lineup, Rosty. You got to get a better running back than Devin Singletary. I know he's a flex. He's okay as a flex, but that's still kind of scary relying on him and the Giants. Daniel Jones? I don't know. Also, Ayuk, he isn't back yet. I mean, he just signed the contract. Dude isn't clicking with that team. He did drop a touchdown that Brock Purdy flicked it right into the corner. He had to dive for it, just couldn't catch it. But, I mean, 3 points, 3.8 points, 5 targets, 2 receptions, 28 yards. What happens if McCaffrey does come back and he steals some of Debo's work, then Debo's stealing Ayuk's work, and Kittle goes off? I mean, that offense, there's just too many players. Sometimes they're going to bust. The good. Tyreek Hill, he did get to play after some racist cops or Trevor Lawrence dressed as a cop, whatever it was. Some police officers in Miami tried to stop Tyreek from playing. He went crazy. Tyreek with the 80-yard touchdown just to show everyone why he's the wide receiver 1. 22.5 fantasy points, 12 targets, 7 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown. He is the alpha in that offense. Ain't nothing stopping Tyreek Hill. Maybe injuries, but Tyreek Hill's a beast. I mean, obviously, he's got to be the best thing on your team if he's on your team. And James Conner. Like I said, it's the Aaron Jones versus James Conner show. James Conner went off even though he played the Bills. I mean, he had a great game. 16 carries, 50 yards, a touchdown. He had a 2-point conversion. 4 targets, 3 receptions, 33 yards. James Conner got that receiving work. He had more than Aaron Jones. Everyone who thinks James Conner is just a runner, he did have the receiving work, and that was against the Bills. What happens when it's an opponent that the Cardinals are beating and James Conner just gets to run the ball? I don't know. He might be a scary player. That might be Rosty's running back 1, even over Derrick Henry. The bench, Rosty had Xavier Worthy. Such a steal. I mean, 2 touchdowns. You're on Mahomes' offense. You don't need a lot of work. I mean, you just need 1 deep touchdown a game, and you're chilling with Patrick Mahomes. Dude can do that every week. Xavier Worthy. Should have started him over Devin Singletary. Anyway, also, Rosty has, I didn't realize this, he has 0 backup running backs. 0 on his team. The only running backs on his team is James Conner, Derrick Henry, and Devin Singletary. That's it. No one else. Like, how are you going to have only those 3 running backs? They're, like, all older, too. They could get injured, and he doesn't have any running backs. That's crazy to me. But he does have some decent receivers on his bench. Xavier Worthy, George Pickens. He had an extra defense he was stashing. Vlad had good backup running backs on his bench. Tony Pollard went off. Zach Moss did good, had a touchdown. Zeke had a touchdown. Good backup running backs, but the receivers, he has no receivers, and that is his weakness. D-Hop, Jordan Addison, that's not backup receivers. And when you have Chris Olave, DK underperform, Diggs did good, you need backup receivers. So Vlad, watch out. He's going to be going through the waiver wire trying to get some receivers, trading for some, because Vlad needs some receivers. That's his weakness. But overall, this matchup was fun. It was cool to see Jordan Mason almost score more fantasy points than Garrett Wilson and Brandon Ayuk. He almost came back. Vlad was down by, I don't know, like 20 points, and Jordan Mason needed to outscore Ayuk and Garrett Wilson, and he did. And even though McCaffrey wasn't playing, Vlad only lost by like 6 points, which was crazy. So that's all the matchups for week 1. I can't wait for week 2. Moving on to trade alert. David and Dennis, the ones that just matched up. David just beat Dennis, so Dennis realized he needs a little piece of David's team to win. Traded Brian Robinson straight up for Jamison Williams. David gives away Jamison Williams after his boom game. Dennis trades away Brian Robinson after a really good game. Dennis is scared Jaden Daniels is going to steal some of Brian Robinson's work, but what's crazy is Brian Robinson had the same amount of targets as Austin Eckler in that game, even though they were losing. So Brian Robinson has the rushing work. He scored the rushing touchdown, and he has the same amount of targets. That means he's half of the pass catcher as well. I think he's almost a little bit game script proof. Jamison Williams, he had a boom game. I really wanted him for the upside, had him as my last pick in the draft. But the only scary thing is Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery are all on that offense. And I don't think Jared Goff is good enough to support 5 viable fantasy options every week. I think there's someone that's not going to be eating, and to be honest, it's Jamison Williams. He's the deep threat guy. He's the guy that has the deep touchdown. If he doesn't have it, he's not scoring a lot. Sam Laporta, he gets receptions. He's a quarterback's best friend at tight end. He can score touchdowns. I mean, we saw that last year. He's a beast. Amon-Ra, I mean, I don't think we're seeing that again. He's consistent. He catches passes, short yardage, yards after catch. He's going to be a beast, and the running backs, they're always going to get work. So Jamison Williams, I think he's the one that's busting. So let me know what you guys think about the trade. I don't want to go too much longer. I've already been yapping for 30 minutes, but we'll go a little bit more. Let's go over the hot takes. I went through the group chat, and everyone's hot takes. Vlad, I mean, this isn't fair because this was after the game, but he says Cooper Kupp is finishing. He's the top 4 wide receiver this year, and I love it. I got Cooper Kupp behind me. I think dude's a beast. I think he's returning back to his old form. No more injuries. If he doesn't get injured, dude's staying on the field. Matthew Stafford loves the guy. No defense can stop him with his motions. He's so good at scoring touchdowns. I think he could even maybe be the number 1 wide receiver on the year if he doesn't get injured and if Puka still has all his injuries and stuff. Rosty says Saquon Barkley will be a top 3 running back. I like it. It's very possible. He has, like I said, he has a good O-line with the Eagles. DeAndre Swift was a beast. He had 3 touchdowns. He already got to a good start. I think he's RB1 on the season right now. Top 3 is tough when you have guys like Bijan. You have guys like Breece Hall. You have guys like McCaffrey coming back. Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams could be in that mix. Joe Mixon did pretty good. Not Joe Mixon. But there's so many other running backs. And really, running backs, if you get a lot of touchdowns, usually you're up there. Derrick Henry could find his way in there, just falling into a lot of touchdowns. There's just so many. Devon Achane could be up there if he has a boom year. I mean, it's hard to get into the top 3 at running back, but I think Barkley has a really good shot. So I like it. Very possible. So far, the first 2 I like. Dan, Mike Evans, 22 touchdowns. I love me some Mike Evans. But 22 touchdowns? I mean, right now he scored, 2 in the first game. He's on pace for, 18 times 32, 36. He's on pace for 36 touchdowns this year. That's crazy. 36 touchdowns. But he's not scoring 2 touchdowns every game. Let's be realistic. If you're saying Mike Evans is scoring 22 touchdowns this year, well, this game he's caught 2 and Baker threw for 4. So he caught half of Baker's touchdowns. And I think that's a good percentage because if you're going, he's catching even more. I don't know if Baker's only throwing to Mike Evans. He's got to spread it out if he wants this offense to work. So 22 touchdowns means Baker Mayfield, he needs to throw 44 touchdowns. And do we really think the Bucs offense is going to have Baker throw 44 touchdowns? I mean, they're not playing the Commanders every week. They're going to have to play a little bit harder defenses. I think there's going to be games where they have rushing touchdowns. I don't think they had a rushing touchdown this game. So 22 touchdowns, a little bit of a stretch. If you said like maybe 15, 18, or just he leads the league in receiving touchdowns, I'd like it. But this one's a little too much for me. Now this one is crazy. This one is just like Kiwi went crazy with this one. He was trying to cook. Ken Walker. Now, there's a little bit of bias here because that's his home team, the Seahawks, but Ken Walker over 2,000 all-purpose yards? I mean, he said he's going to have a better season than '05 Sean Alexander. Let me read you the stats of '05 Sean Alexander, because Kiwi, I don't even think you know. '05 Sean Alexander, 370 carries. I don't even think Derrick Henry ever gets that much at his peak. 370 carries, 1,880 yards. Now that's only rushing yards. That's not all-purpose. That's only rushing yards. 27 rushing touchdowns. 370 carries, 1,880 yards, 27 rushing touchdowns. If Ken Walker does that this year, how is he not the #1 overall pick in fantasy next year? I don't think this Seahawks offense can support that. And then also he had 15 receptions for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. There is no shot Ken Walker does better than that. That's going to be like one of the greatest fantasy seasons of all time. I mean, he got off to a decent start. He had like 17 or something fantasy, 15, 17 fantasy points in week 1, but 2K all-purpose yards not happening. I will say Kiwi did get a little pressured because he said 1,500 all-purpose yards, and Dan said that's not hot enough of a take. 1,500, even that I think is a stretch, Kiwi. I think that's a good hot take. Dennis says, Breece Hall, RB1 on the season. I'm standing by this. This is not a hot take. He's drafted as an RB2. You're just saying he's going to move up 1 spot. And McCaffrey already missed the first game. That is not a hot take saying Breece Hall is the RB1. You got to give us something else with that. Like, seriously, Breece Hall is the RB1. He was like, didn't he finish like top 5 or top 10 last season? You can't say that. Like, if you said Raheem Mostert last season was going to be a RB1, that's crazy. But Dennis saying the #1 overall running back is going to be Breece Hall. Not a hot take, so we throw that out of here. We don't care if he hits it. That's not a hot take. Dan says 49ers are winning the Super Bowl. First of all, everyone said not a hot take because they made the Super Bowl, but Vlad said it is a hot take because they haven't won it yet. And I do think it's a hot take because they're not going to win it. They're not winning it. I don't see it happening. They're just choke artists. They suck. They don't know how to close. Does every team, every year, the 49ers are always so good. Jimmy Garoppolo went to the Super Bowl. Colin Kaepernick went to the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy went to the Super Bowl. But none of them can close. These 49ers suck. They can't close games. They're not winning the Super Bowl. I mean, Brock Purdy is just barely better than Jimmy G. You look at their stats. He's barely better. He's a game manager. He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. I know he's a starter now, but it's just I don't care how good your team is. When I have Patrick Mahomes on the other side, I'm always choosing Patrick Mahomes. Look at this last year's Super Bowl. I'm choosing Patrick Mahomes. I have the Kansas City Chiefs three-peating. I don't even think the 49ers are going to make it because there's just something about when you make the Super Bowl and you lose, you got to really have a fire to come back and win it, and I don't think the 49ers got that in them. Yeah, they have great players, McCaffrey, Debo, George Kittle, what is that guy's name? Trent Williams. They have great players, but you got to have someone that can take over the game. I just don't see Brock Purdy doing that. I don't think, I know it's a team sport, but you can't just win with coaching and an average quarterback. All right, now, my hot takes. I never posted these in the group chat, but I did tell people when we talked around. We met up to watch the Thursday night game, Friday night game. People were asking hot takes. I got 2. Number 1 is when I was watching that Ravens game, I saw Derrick Henry score that touchdown. I think he's going to have 20 rushing touchdowns. I know he looks slow. I know he doesn't look like Derrick Henry. He looks older, but it's the Ravens offense. Lamar Jackson's not a goal line back. Justice Hill's not a goal line back. And this game they played against the Chiefs, they were losing. It's not always you're going to play the Chiefs. The Ravens are a great team. I heard someone say that they're favored in every game except 2 more games the rest of the season. If they're favored, they're going to be winning every game. They're running the ball. As soon as they get within 5-yard line, you know who they're going to? They're going to Derrick Henry, and that guy's so big, he just has to fall forward, and he's in the end zone. I think it's a very good chance Derrick Henry has 20 rushing touchdowns. And then Justin Jefferson, I do think he will have 2,000 yards receiving. I heard that from the fantasy footballers, 2,000 yards receiving, and I really like it. Maybe it wasn't the fantasy footballers, maybe it was someone else, but I heard someone say it, and I really like it. 2,000 yards receiving, Justin Jefferson. I mean, they're going to be losing. Sam Darnold, in his first game, he's looked all right. Justin Jefferson didn't have a lot of yards, but that's because they were winning. They scored a defensive touchdown. They were just going crazy. They were doing whatever they wanted against the Giants. But when there's a team that can cover you better than the New York Giants can, what do you do as a quarterback? You just throw it up to your best player. Everyone knows that. You just throw it to your best player, and I think Justin Jefferson can get so much separation. He can average 100 yards a game, over 100, 120, 150 yards a game, and he can go for 2,000 yards if he stays healthy all season. That's it for this week's recap. Coming to you from, I don't know, I'm here in my office. Fantasy football's back. The champ is back. I'm ready to win my second title to two-peat, just like the Chiefs did. My team's looking hot. I feel sorry for all you guys. It's going to be a great season, boys. Let's keep up those waiver bids. Keep up the dropping your fab, doing trades, staying interactive, and let me know what you think of my video, what you agree with, what you disagree with. I'll see you next week. Peace.